You ever watch a cop smash your kid's phone while another paints your chest with a red laser, and you're standing there with your hands already up, thinking this might be the moment your family learns what it costs to be proud in public? You ever hold your breath because the person you love is screaming your name and you can't move or it all goes sideways? If it were you, what would you have done? It was a sticky evening at a nothing gas station, a moth batting circles under a tired light. The kind of place that sells warm sodas and expired jerky. The kind of place where trouble doesn't need an invitation. My Harley was purring low fuel, ticking my leather vest, mostly hidden by a jacket, because I wasn't trying to flex, just pass through. Tanya sat in our SUV with the engine off hands at 10 and 2 out of pure habit, and our son Darius, 13 and long-legged, blinked awake in the back seat, looking like a kid who still believed the world could be fair if it tried hard enough. Then the patrol car rolled in slow. Not lazy slow, not Sunday, slow, deliberate slow. Two officers' boots on gravel hands riding that space between casual and draw. I've been in rooms like that, you know what I mean? Where a man's mind is already halfway to violence and he's walking his body over to catch up. I kept it clean. No sudden moves, no attitude. I replaced the nozzle, wiped my hands, squared my shoulders the way the Corps teaches you, visible, measured, controlled. Hands where I can see them, the tall one barked. Nameplate said Tanner. He said there was a robbery up the road, someone matching my description, like that's not a sentence a black man hears twice a month. Sir, we've been on the road with our family, I said. Voice steady because I know how fast tone gets weaponized. He wasn't listening to meaning only hunting for trigger words. Then he spotted a glow in the SUV. Darius had done what I drilled into him, what I wish I never had to teach a child. Document. Don't escalate. Stay quiet. Stay safe. Tanner yanked the door, snatched the phone, and smashed it on the concrete. The crack echoed under that buzzing light, and I swear something thin and important snapped inside me. Cole, the other deputy, lifted his taser, and a red dot quivered on my sternum like a promise I didn't want. Keyboard courage is free, I get it. Some folks say they'd have swing first, think later. Let me ask you straight. Would you throw down and let your kid watch a headline write itself? Or would you swallow every sharp piece of pride you've got left and choose to live the next 5 minutes? I chose my son. There's my boy watching, I said, palms high, fingers spread, every muscle arguing with me. Don't do this. That's when my vest shifted. The jacket slid just enough for the red and white to catch the light. The skull that has started fights and ended them. The rocker beneath it that isn't given, it's earned. Hell's Angels, Vice President. You could see the calculation cut across their faces, confusion flipping to, oh. They weren't dealing with a loner anymore. They were about to write a check the whole county was going to be asked to cash. Engines. A low ripple, then a rolling thunder. Bones, my chapter president, took the turn like a sermon formation, settling into a clean half-circle chrome-catching moth light, a line of men who know discipline better than most folks know breakfast. No wild revs, no threats, just presence. Bones stepped off, chin up, eyes level. Badge numbers, he said, voice even. Both of you, now. It wasn't a question. Heat rose off Tanner's neck like a stovetop. They backed off half a step, then another. We took the exit ramp from that scene quick and quiet, because a humiliated man in uniform is like a wasp in your helmet, predictable only in the damage he's about to chase. I rolled out in front, Tanya tucked the SUV tight behind me, and the sky turned that deep blue that says, pick your direction and pray. 5 miles later, the mirror bloomed with light. 1 cruiser, then 2, then 3, the 4th sliding sideways across both lanes like a dare. "They're not done," I said into the wind, mostly to myself. We eased to a stop. The spotlight burned hot enough to make sweat run down my ribs. Sheriff Doyle stepped out with that walk some men have when no one's told them no since high school. "Step out of the vehicle." "Mr. Kane," he said. Smooth like oil. After that, it was knee in my back, cuffs biting bone, asphalt in my teeth, Tanya's voice breaking on my name, Darius's cry going from boy to man in one terrible second, me deciding not to fight because fighting gets you killed in places like this, because surviving humiliation is still surviving. County jail air tastes like bleach and old pennies. They stripped me, joked about my tattoos, fingered the ink ring around my finger, told me to spread, told me to cough, and looked for the piece of me they could push that would make me less than a man. You can take everything a person has on them, but you can't take what they decide not to give. I stared at a hairline crack in cinder block and counted breaths like I was back in the desert counting seconds to wait out incoming. In the yard next day, an older man with kind eyes and a pastor's voice sat down across from me. "Name's Reggie," he said, like we were on a front porch, like we had time. "In here, that patch won't protect you the way it does out there. Keep your head, son." I told him I would. He looked deep, like he was reading the part of me I don't show people. "And keep your hope," he added, almost a whisper. Night came hard. Rain started tapping the tiny high window like someone knocking from outside. I heard laughter from the guard desk, that thin, sharp kind you learn to hate. Tanner bragging Cole, trying to sound like a man who believed his own report. Then Doyle's voice, flat and smug. "Footage shows what I say it shows." That sentence slid across my skin like a cold blade. While they were busy scripting reality, Tanya was out there chasing truth. She called Aisha Jordan a civil rights attorney with a calm that makes tyrants sweat, the kind of woman who writes with a pen that feels like a scalpel. They went back to that gas station. The night clerk, Louis Young, hands shaking, said the cameras were digital, every angle recorded, and no, he hadn't turned anything over. He told the sheriff's men the system was down. Aisha smiled the way surgeons do before they cut to save a life. She preserved files, stamped timestamps, got affidavits from the cashier, a trucker, 2 customers, and she walked out carrying proof like a lantern. Darius took a 30-second clip, the one that showed the smash, the shove the taser dot on my chest, and posted it. I wish he didn't know how, but he did, and he did it right. The internet smelled the lie and went hunting. By breakfast, news vans idled at the jail. By lunch, bikers and veterans and church ladies and warehouse crews were lined up at the fence, flags and posters and faces that said, "We saw what you tried to make us not see. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind." They should have paused. Pride doesn't pause. 3 days later, after an emergency hearing pried the door open, and I walked onto those courthouse steps and hugged my kid so hard I thought I'd crack him after a rally in the park, where I said a father's version of a prayer into a microphone, and the engines answered like an amen. They hit us again. Pre-dawn. Hard knock. FBI, open up. Tanya looked at me, and I looked at Darius, and I knelt and put both my hands on his shoulders. "Look at me, son," I said. "This isn't goodbye. It's just more fighting to do, but the kind we know how to win." They hauled me on fresh charges, claiming a new dash cam showed I threw the first punch before any of the station footage. Convenient, right? Do you think that's fair? Back inside, the guards had that swagger of men who mistake borrowed power for their own. Reggie whispered through the bars, "They're feeling the heat out there." He meant the chants, the engines, the cameras, the truth. And then the twist hit like lightning. Aisha got an email from a burner account after midnight. Subject line, Doyle proof. It was an audio file. Doyle clear as day. Got that biker right where I want him. You and Tanner stick to the story. That thug hit first. You could hear the smirk on every word. Metadata locked. Time, date, location. And a young guard sick to his stomach recorded Doyle leaning into my cell earlier, whisper spitting, "Ain't so tough without your gang, are you? This is my house." It went viral before sunrise. Yeah, that happened. Courtroom 3 felt like it could hold its breath longer than a man. Judge walked in with that quiet gravity people pretend a badge gives them, but only discipline actually does. The prosecutor opened with routine stop. Aisha was up before the second syllable landed. "Objection, Your Honor, counsel is pre-trying a narrative that ignores racial profiling," she said, crisp as new paper. Sustained, the judge said a single word that sounded like the floor settling back where it belonged. They rolled a screen to center. The station angles came up clean and merciless. Me at the pump hand's visible voice steady. Tanner pushing space, Cole circling my bike like a hyena. Darius's phone flashing, then cracking the sound, hitting the jurors like a slap. I kept my face still because I didn't trust my throat to carry anything but a sob if I let it. Aisha let the video run to the end. No cuts. No voiceover. Then she clicked play on Doyle. His words filled the room. Every slur, every order to lie, every brag. The prosecutor flailed for chain of custody like a drowning man reaching for a rope he never learned to tie. Aisha had authentications stacked and paged. The judge nodded. It comes in. Cole took the stand, sweat running a thin path along his temple eyes, flicking to where Doyle sat in the front row, with a jaw full of nails. Aisha asked him the questions that save lives when truth still matters. Did Mr. Kane throw the first punch? No, ma'am. Were you instructed to falsify your report? Yes, ma'am. The room hummed like a transformer. Doyle snapped. He lunged up, curses scraping the air, a man being dragged by his own temper into a cage he built for other people. "Remove Sheriff Doyle, place him under arrest for threatening a witness," the judge said, and you could feel the building itself unclench. I won't bore you with every motion and sidebar, every point Aisha made, that landed exactly where it needed every juror's face as they realized the story they were sold didn't match the one the camera told. When the verdicts came, the foreman's voice was steady. Assaulting an officer, not guilty. Resisting arrest, not guilty. Obstruction, not guilty. Tanya squeezed my hand so hard my bones sang. Darius put his hand on ours and smiled like the sun after a storm. The judge turned to Tanner and Cole, their uniforms gone, their swagger gone, and talked about honor and trust, and how some jobs demand a standard higher than human comfort. Sentencing. Consequences. Not vengeance. Accountability. We stepped outside and the sound met us like surf. Engines, cheers, strangers' voices carrying our names like they knew us. A reporter shoved a mic too close and asked, "How do you feel?" I looked at my wife, at my boy, at Bones, and the riders holding a shape around us like a shield, and I said, "We stood together. That was it. That was everything. You want the part that still keeps me up at night." 3 nights later, the lawn went orange. A burning cross threw shadows on our living room wall, red paint dripping traitors across our siding. The patrol car took its time. The officer shrugged and called it vandalism, wrote lazy notes like my son wasn't shaking in a doorway, barefoot, and trying to be brave. So we did what families do when the door won't open, and you still need to walk through. We built a new one. The Darius Project. Legal aid for folks who can't afford a lawyer to carry their truth into rooms built to ignore it. Counselors for kids who saw what kids shouldn't see. education for departments that want to be what their oath says, and a rapid response team that shows up with cameras and calm and says we're here to witness, not to scream. A week later, the angels rolled up to the courthouse, and Bones handed me a new vest. Same red and white, same skull, new rocker underneath that said honor through justice. A national role. Not about being the loudest man in the room, about being the one who won't look away, about stepping into places where my patch walks in before I do, and making sure the first thing people see is a father who loves his family and a veteran who still believes a badge should be a promise. We rode that evening, all three of us. Tanya on her own bike now because she said she was done being a passenger in any sense of the word, Darius behind her, with fingertips light on her jacket, me up front, watching the same highway, where all this started, stretch out cleaner than I remembered. We passed the station. The Confederate decal on that old pickup was gone. Luis lifted a hand from the doorway. The window held a paper sign someone had taped up that said, "All welcome here." Small. Maybe small is how big starts. Now I can hear some of you already, and I respect it. Not all cops. Don't break the law, and this won't happen. Hell's Angels are criminals. Okay. Here's my truth in plain language. I've met officers who pulled me aside when I was young and dumb, and could have ruined my whole life. I've watched them treat people with a kind of firm kindness that changes neighborhoods. I've also watched men wear a badge like a sledgehammer. Both are real. The patch on my back has a history, and so does this country, good and bad, braided together like barbed wire and flowers. A man is what he does with the power in his hands, and a system is what it becomes when nobody checks it. That's the debate I want in these comments. That's the argument worth having. Let me end with the choice I had in the first 10 seconds. Pride or presence. I chose to live to witness, to gather receipts, to fight right, to come home and hug my son on those steps, to start something that might help the next family who gets caught in a story someone else tries to write. If you were at that pump, if a man smashed your kid's phone and dragged your name through dirt, you never walked in, what would you have done? Be honest. Do you think the way this played out is the way a country should function, or do we owe each other a standard that doesn't change with the color of your skin or the patch on your back? Drop your thoughts below. Argue with me, agree with me, tell me where you're watching from and what your town looks like when blue lights wash the street. Share a time you saw something wrong and chose to record instead of react, or react instead of record. Tell me what you would teach your kid if you had to have the same talk I had on my front step. Hit subscribe if you want more than outrage, if you want strategy, community, and a way forward, and share this with someone who needs to know that justice doesn't always come fast, but it can come if we stand together and refuse to look away. Your story matters. Say it out loud.